It's a third. My assumption is some of you plan on graduating. I think that's cute. Third of June.
What's the last day this year?
Huh?
Is the 8th the last day this year?
I can't remember. I think it is. Still going to be a long year.
Is it actually on the 3rd? Yeah. Okay.
All right. So, industrialization. And just like the United States was going through this, amazing new products, new technologies are being created, but at the same time you have inequalities being created and a real gap between the rich and the poor that spread throughout Europe. And every country in Europe was going through some stage of industrialization. Russia was literally just beginning it. Germany had gone through an unprecedented economic growth in the 30 years before the war. Britain had started. And all the problems, all the benefits of new products and also new scientific innovations were coming out. People were living longer, but also packed in the cities. And remember how the United States, there were 24,000 strikes. So there's a lot of issues with the industrialization. And that is why a lot of people thought industrialization, now that we've got all these new amazing products, but the fear of revolution, a socialist revolution. Germany had the largest socialist party in the world. This is supposed to be a German worker. And these are supposed to be the different countries in Europe, but they can't hold the workers down if they're unified. There was a fear coming up that there was going to be Armageddon. Leon Czolgosz, who did he assassinate?
McKinley.
Who?
McKinley.
McKinley. And what was Czolgosz's philosophy? He was a what?
Modern socialist.
Yeah, bomb-throwing anarchist. Well, there were anarchist assassinations all over Europe at this time. And so the assumption was this was going to happen. That's Jean Jaurès, the famous French socialist. You don't even know him, I just put him up there. But the feeling was there's going to be some kind of revolution. They talked about the apocalypse is coming, Armageddon. Something's going to happen. Yeah.
Socialism and other policies.
No, it's part of industrialization. And the idea was that somehow socialist revolution will come because of industrialization. And this real gap between those who have and those who have not, which is going to be the continual problem. That's part of the reason why in Europe today, because of World War I and World War II, many of the countries are social democracies. They have a lot of socialism in them to make sure there's no revolution. I mean, they consciously thought that they don't want fascism or something like the Soviet Union. Yeah.
So it was like happening all over the world.
Mm-hmm. Well, at least in Europe.
Like, oh yeah, so like Europe and the US.
Yeah, in Japan. And next, and this fits in with the rest of the world, now with the newfound power in Europe, but also the United States, we have imperialism. Now, remember what imperialism is what? Empire. Why? What do you want from it? Yeah, profit. Power might be money, prestige, whatever it might be. Well, this map, this shows the Allied powers. They're also called the Entente. The United States would eventually become part of that. That's in green or light green. Look how much of the world they control. Either through colony or like a country like Russia, the US, massive countries. Brazil, a bunch of Central America kind of joined into the war in 1918. Whereas, what do we get from the treaty? That kind of thing. And even the Central powers were in orange. They were massive too. There's this conflict for empire, fighting to either protect your empire or expand your empire. And remember, empire is not for profit. And those who live there, the people who live in these empires become nothing more than, well, tools to make money. And so this growth of imperialism, that's what the socialists would say during this war. You're a bunch of imperialists who are fighting this war so you get more land and more money. And there's an element of truth to that. And Africa is a classic example of this. I put this picture up because it shows 1878 Africa. And if you look at this, you see just a few spots for every European control, which Africa's huge, so it's a big area. 1914. Every place but two in Africa now had either direct or not actually direct European rule. Remember Liberia? The American Colonization Society, hopefully that rings a bell. And then Ethiopia just barely held out. They defeated an Italian invasion attempt, even though they lost all their access to the sea. Rest of it, this green, French West and Equatorial Africa. A lot of desert, but it still looks big, doesn't it? Britain in blue all the way down to here. German, even Belgium had a massive colony, the Congo. that they horribly and brutally mistreated people there. The point is, they're conquering all the rest of the world. And so while the Europeans and the Americans are industrially expanding and growing, the rest of the world is behind because they're being conquered. They're going to be underdeveloped. But also, this competition for empire will lead to conflicts. There were almost four different times, there was almost war in the 20 years before World War I over empire. So it's coming. Everyone just knows it's going to happen. Next. Here you have a bunch of these old monarchs who, even though you have modern industrial states like Germany, they are still ruled by a monarch who thinks it's 1650. And yes, they have constitutions, they have political parties, they have parliaments, yet they still have almost autocratic rule. And they're desperately trying to, the monarchs are trying to hold on to their power. And they're still ruling like it's 1500, and they're about ready to, it's the French and the French and the Spanish fighting over little territories. The one monarch we do need to know, there's a bunch, but this is not a European history class, but the one you have to know is the Kaiser of Germany. Kaiser means Caesar or emperor, and you should remember him, Wilhelm, William II. Kaiser William in English, or the Americans and British during the war called him Kaiser Bill. And yes, there was a parliament, there was a social democratic socialist party there, but at the same time, he controlled the army, the foreign policy, it had almost full control. And think about it, he wants more power for his country, that would leave more power to him. And so, by the time he took power, Germany was becoming the most industrialized state in Europe. That's the biggest and best trained army. And they're stuck with this guy. And this guy is totally inadequate. This is the problem for having monarchies. You're stuck with whoever takes the throne. You're just stuck with them. If they're good, great. If they're not, horrible. He was not dumb, but he had every insecurity you could imagine. And it all stemmed from this. And you two should remember this, I hope. His left arm. There was a slight breech birth and childbirth, and this is 1860. And so they had to use forceps, which I didn't want to think about how awful this is, but it dislocated his shoulder. And his left arm never grew. So his left arm was about 2/3 the size of his right arm. His hand was his little tiny hand. He had very little movement of it, so he had a withered left arm. In fact, that's why he would always have it bent, he would always carry like a glove. So he had his hand like this, so it didn't look like that much smaller because it's bent. He'd wear gloves on, and then be carrying a glove. Or a baton, a marshal's baton, like a field marshal, always. And here's the deal. He was always humiliated by this, brutally mistreated. How can you be the Kaiser, which is like a warlord, and have a withered left arm? In fact, his tutor would brutally abuse him, brutally beat him to get him to ride a horse and do all these things. So think about it. As he got older and did like all kings had to join the army, just like British kings today, they have to join the military. So was Prince Henry. He went to Sandhurst, didn't he? Yeah, which is their military academy in England, for example. How can you be a warrior with a withered left arm? So he's going to spend the rest of his life overcompensating for this. So he has this attitude essentially like this. How can you make fun of my withered left arm when I have the strongest army in the world? That kind of insecure man is in charge of the most dynamic and arguably dangerous country in the world. That's scary. To give you an idea what kind of person he was, he would work his right arm to make it very powerful. He was like a crack shot, so he'd kill thousands of animals to prove he could do it. And he liked to chop wood. He could make a double-bladed axe with one arm and just chop wood for hours. So you can imagine how powerful his arm would be. This is the kind of person he was. So he'd meet somebody, shake their hand, and he would grip it and squeeze it so hard that people, they cry in agony. Sometimes he'd break fingers and knuckles. He would carry on like a casual conversation with someone else and not let go of their hand and make them go to their knees sometimes, just kind of random. That's mentally ill. and he has the strongest army. Actually, the strongest army in the world. You see a problem when you're stuck with somebody like that. So that's the one you need to know. Here is, now you won't have to write this one down. I'm just giving you ideas. A couple of you should remember this to get into the last one, the Euro. That's Franz Joseph, the Kaiser or Emperor of Austria-Hungary. And he had been on the throne since 1848. Since 1848. To get the dates in? Yeah, he was 84 when the war began? And his whole goal was to keep this hodgepodge of nationalities in one big empire. And they were allies. So he did everything he can to try to just hold his empire together. Here is, this didn't work, I'm sorry. That is the Sultan of Turkey. That is the Kaiser right there. You can see the arm with a marshal's baton. And that's the Kaiser of Bulgaria. The Kaiser of Bulgaria had delusions of grandeur. They were cousins. They're all related. All related. Here are the allied monarchs. So that is King George of England. His first cousin, Kaiser Wilhelm of Germany. His distant cousin was Prince Albert of Belgium. But this is one man we need to know right here. The other guy, the allied example of an autocratic monarch, Tsar Nicholas II. Nicholas II. His first cousins, the Kaiser, and, isn't this creepy? They're cousins. Isn't that creepy how close they are? Russia, Britain. King George V, right? And, yeah.
Nicholas the what?
The second. And he was an autocratic czar. He had full power of Russia, and he was totally inadequate for the position. He knew, in fact, he wept when he heard that he was emperor after his father died. He knew he could not be emperor. And what's the #1 job of an emperor? It's not leading the country. It's doing what? Of a king. They got to have something. They have to. Their #1 is to have, in Russia, it has to be a man. It has to be a man. And he had 4 daughters and no son. And then when he finally did have a son, as inadequate as he was, at least he had a son as a leader. And his son, Alexis, his great aunt was Queen Victoria of England. Did you catch an inbreeding thing here? Did you catch the inbreeding? What disease did Alexis have from Victoria?
The one where he bleeds a lot.
Yeah, hemophilia.
The one that's
And the thing was, okay, if you're cut, that's bad. But at least you can put pressure on it. A bruise, that's the bad part. You know, bruises, internal bleeding, and that could kill him. And it swells and swells and swells, and I guess the pain is shocking. How bad that hurts. His son had hemophilia. He kept it secret because the Tsar is supposed to be like a god, and only one man seemed to cure it. Rasputin. Now, Rasputin is still up here, but Rasputin was a monk from Siberia. And he seemed to have this power to calm Alexis down. And so here's Rasputin now becoming a very important part of the royal family, and nobody knows why he's there. And this is the problem when you have hereditary monarchs. They couldn't admit Alexis was sick, and here you have Rasputin, who turned out to be a horrific man. He would go out in St. Petersburg and drink more than any human could drink. I mean, gallons, I don't mean water. And he was this kind of lecherous guy who women would flock to him, you know, especially wives and daughters of noblemen. And so he'd have like this harem of 50 or 60 women. And so he had this reputation of being this horrible, lecherous man. Why would the Tsar have this lecherous man as an advisor? Because that's what he appears to be. It made the monarch seem unstable, the monarchy, and therefore that was the system that still existed in 1914 when the war began. There's more about Russia. Russia's an amazing place. And then we could tell you more Rasputin stories. Don't let me forget, I'll tell you how he died. It's an absolutely remarkable story. And he has various body parts now that have been cut off and are now in jars of alcohol, so you can see them. And it's just more disgusting than you think.
I'm sorry, what was this? He could do what?
Somehow his presence would help Alexis and
The son.
yeah. Don't know what it was. I mean, sure, there'd be some kind of psychosomatic connection, but the assumption was he must have been having an affair with the Tsarina, which almost certainly is not.
Sorry, it's not the.
Yeah. She was a German. Actually, he's a German too. The royal family of Russia were all Germans. So were the royal family of England. I think it's pretty funny.
I
Yeah.
heard that word 3 times today, and I've never heard it before today. Sorry,
That's weird.
yeah, it's really annoying. I was in Western Civ when I read it somewhere.
Well, yeah, I guess, but it makes sense in Western Civ. So, next. Oh, that didn't work. Nationalism. And nationalism, the tentacles of nationalism started 100 years earlier. Remember, the United States started after the War of 1812. And nationalism has two contexts. The first one, okay, we've talked about one, so let's talk about this first kind. If you look at Europe, when you look at the map of Europe, and when you do the 1914 map, you really see it, especially compared to 1918. It's a totally different map. Look at these huge empires, and Ottoman Empire too. There's all sorts of national groups and ethnic groups and cultural groups in these areas, these multicultural empires. Nationalism in its first context was different groups, different ethnic groups want to become or want to have an independent country. That's nationalism. Make sure you get that down if you're not sure. They want their own independent country. It was a very powerful movement that also, once again, it's the Enlightenment and the Industrial Revolution. And then once you have your country, you get to the second form of nationalism. So you look at this map here. There's no Poland. That was part of 3 countries then. They want to be independent. Poland, Lithuania, Latvia, Estonia. They want to be independent countries. The Ukraine, Belarus. Here we have Bosnia, Croatia, Slovenia, the Czech Republic, Slovakian Republic, and so on. You have all these groups that want to be independent countries. And this is like Austria is desperate to hold it. These areas here in the Balkan had just broke away from the Ottoman Empire. What we call Turkey, it's the Ottoman Empire. And just literally became independent. And especially here, there are all types of ethnic groups. And they're just piled on top of each other. So you're going to have Poles and Germans and Czechs and different types of Slavs, also a large Jewish population, all living together. And so they want their own countries, which, as you can imagine, we have all these groups living together will cause a lot of problems down the road. And then you have these empires trying to hold it together. And that's what happened in Western Europe. You know, these are the French. Of course, you will see in Belgium. Belgium's like 2 different countries. What's that? They're blue. That's the Allied countries. I know exactly what you mean. It's kind of a weird map.
So when I looked at it, I was like, is it like backwards?
Good point. I just put this map because it really showed the contrast, but that is a good point. Didn't even think about that.
It took me a long time.
This is a map from Germany, but it shows all the different ethnic groups. And these are just, they're not all of them. These are just the major different ethnic groups. So you see, you go back, France, that's French. But look at all the different colors here. And these are all Slavic peoples, and half of them are under Austrian rule, and Austrians are Germans. They're not Slavs. And the big thing we have to get is, write down 2 things. The Slavs in the Balkans. The Slavs in this Balkan Peninsula. All these Slavic peoples here either just fought for their independence or they want the rest of the Slavs to be independent. And the most important of the Slavic countries that you got to get down in this context of the Balkans is right here. It's called Serbia. Today we call it Yugoslavia, but it's Serbia. Yugoslavia just means basically the country of the Slavs. In fact, Serbia wanted to unify with the Slavs who live in Austria. In fact, they want the Slavs here to rise up and revolt against the Austrians. What Serbia wants, they had a name for it. It was called Greater Serbia. And they were going to make a Slavic country, they call it Pan-Slavism too, under the control of the Serbians. Now, the reason why this is important is because this area here is Austria. Serbia is trying to undermine them. So to the Austrian point of view, Serbians are real enemies, are real enemies. And it's going to be this Serbian, Austrian clash. Serbia really was a nasty monarchy. When in 1911, their king abdicated the throne by being thrown out a window onto an iron fence. That's Serbia. It really was a nasty place, brutal kingdom. And Austria saw them as real enemies. This map, all the colored areas of the Slavic peoples today. So they have different ethnic groups within the Slavs. So, the Poles or the Czechs or the Serbians or parts of Macedonia, that sort of thing. Well, what's the largest country of Slavs? Russia. Russia is the largest Slavic country. And so Russia sees itself as the protector of the Slavs, or for that matter, Serbia. And so you already have Russia and Austria competing for this area with Serbia kind of in the middle. So it's going to be an action by Serbia and then the reaction by Austria that will help lead to war. And there are other areas we have. The Ottoman Empire had all these different groups under them that eventually wanted to become their own countries. And that, I didn't even mention Russia, and then Germans, etc. Yeah.
So did Russia want to help Serbia
Yeah.
Greater Serbia? Okay.
Russia always wanted, they've always wanted this. And so if any way they can get their influence down here, that's what they wanted. This one really shows all the different ethnic groups here. And that's not only just different Slavic peoples, but there's Christians, there's some Lutherans, and Catholics are also, they're Christians. They're also Eastern Orthodox, which is, it's different, and a lot of Muslims, because the Ottomans used to control that area. So it's a real amazing place. Otto von Bismarck, the former Chancellor of Germany back in the 1870s, one responsible more than anyone else for unifying Germany. He would say, some damn fool thing in the Balkans is going to blow this all up. He said that back in the 1870s. They knew something here. And after the Cold War ended in the 1990s, some of the most horrific fighting in European history since World War II is going to happen here. Awful, nightmarish fighting. So, another form of nationalism, though, that we've talked about this before, is intense love for your country. Now, once you love your country, is to push this idea of unconditional love for your country. Why do you love your country? I'll get to culture in just a second. And nationalism, you love your country because of what?
It's yours.
Because it's yours. My country is the greatest because it's my country, therefore I love it. Why do I love it? Because it's my country, because it's the greatest, because I love it. Let me just kind of go in this circular. So this is blind love of your country. And nationalism really helps leaders. They push, we must do this for the glory of France, or the United States, or Germany. Don't debate, it's for the greater good of the country. Well, Germany was the most dynamic country in Europe. They were created back in 1871. And it was created out of a bunch of different little principalities and kingdoms. Here is Germany in 1871, and Prussia, the biggest of them, actually was created from a bunch of different kingdoms. And then we have like the kingdom of Bavaria, Baden-Baden, there's the independent city of Bremen, all these little countries, they morphed together to form Germany. So what Germany did is, a group of philosophers have been doing this, who wanted unification, and when it happened, they made up a German mythology. They made up this idea that Germany is great because of the word for civilization is culture. And culture is a proper noun here. And this represented this German myth that we are a superior civilization, that we are the most cultured. And think about many of the greatest scientists and philosophers and composers were German-speaking people. Before there was a German, a lot of them. But this idea was there's something special about us, our culture, and that's why they're Germans. And so they made up this whole mythology of German superiority. This goes back to the beginning of the 19th century, but going into the 20th century, think about if you're in school and you're told from day one, we are the best because we're Germans. What are you going to start believing? Why? Yeah, and what makes us German? What about us is German? Well, remember that show, that hierarchy of race? Remember that stuff from, well, this is that time when they had all these different races. So a very science-y idea came about of a unique German race that came about after German unification. What do we call this German race? Have you heard of the Aryans? Made up sciencey garbage. That, and what does an Aryan look like? A-R-Y-A-N. Aryan. Blonde hair, blue-eyed, muscular, tall. You know, that this whole. Okay, and what the problem is, what's happening? Are all Germans blonde hair, blue-eyed? No. And so what Germans are saying, they're trying to pollute our culture. Race mixing, especially those Slavs, but also somebody else, Jews. Remember I said this was the most racist time? The Slavs were going to pollute us. They're going to weaken us. And also, if we're the best, how does everyone feel about us? What do they want to do to us? Germany gets this feeling that everyone's out to get us. Everyone's out to get us. We are surrounded by enemies and they're going to attack us. Now, this is a postcard that they gave, actually, a little picture they gave to children in school in Germany, 1915, 1916. And so look at all the happy kids. Here is Germany in classic Teutonic garb, and it's being attacked by everybody else in the world because they're jealous of Germany. So these are caricatures to represent either countries or areas. Who's this? France. Yeah, France. Who's that? Good. No polling. Good guess. Yeah. So. Yeah, you saw the. Yeah.
Turkey.
Yeah, Arabia. Even though they're allies, you're going to say everyone's out to get us. That's a hard one. That's it. Who's that?
Africa.
Yeah, just Africa. Which, by the way, who's this?
China.
China and Japan. They're both like this on the side. I think that's kind of funny.
Russia.
Yeah, the United States. Everyone's out to attack, and we're going to beat them up. This is World War I. You know, it's World War I. So they would put the date the war started. On German medals, for example, like the Iron Cross, you can tell what war it's from by on the back. It'll say the date. So World War I will say 1914. World War II, 1939. Franco-Prussian War, 1870. Those are basically German wars. And so think about it. If you believe everyone's jealous of you, they hate you, they want to destroy you, what would this justify you do as a country? If you know down the road they're going to attack. What's that?
Build an army.
Build an army and then do what? Attack first. This idea to defend our culture is going to be this growing attitude in Germany that we're going to attack, to go to war sometime. We got to go to war because they're going to destroy us. They're going to get us. And so you see this in German mythology. And so when a lot of people looked at what happened with the growth of Nazi Germany, and there is some mystery about that happening. How did it happen? Why were they so susceptible to it? You got to go back before World War I. They were already basically kind of thinking that. And if you know anything about Germany, and I like Germans, and Germany is a great place, but they do have that little bit of an arrogant attitude there. Because it's stuck. Now, we're from the United States. We have a similar attitude in a way. All right, so 5, the arms race. And the arms race, it's a combination of a couple different things, but mass armies, but then also unification, or alliances. They go together. Because once you go into the 20th century, with the Industrial Revolution, we build more weapons, better weapons, got high explosives, better, more powerful, more horrific artillery, better ships, and more men in uniform. There are 5 great powers in Europe. Germany had the strongest army, Britain had the strongest navy, but no one country was too strong, even though Germany was becoming, you can imagine with the Kaiser. He's bullying everybody. He's a bully. That's just the best way to describe it. There are 5 great powers. Which one of the darker colored countries is not a great power?
Italy.
Yeah. Italy just wasn't there yet. It was a new country too, and it was just too bitterly divided. So, there are 2 alliances we need to know. The first alliance is going to be called the Triple Alliance. And if you look at this map, you can see it's in the central part of the country, but in reality, the Triple Alliance is an alliance of 2 countries and 1 other countries on the periphery. Germany and Austria had an iron alliance. They were stuck to each other. Austria desperately needed Germany's help to hold its empire together, and Germany needed Austria because it's their only ally. And Germany was clearly the stronger partner. By 1916, the dark joke in Germany during World War I was that they're shackled to a corpse. That's how Austria they thought was so decrepit. Italy was part of the alliance, but Italy and Austria hated each other. Hated each other. Especially Italy hated Austria. For years of Austrian occupation, this goes way back. And so Germany knew Italy probably would never be a very reliable ally, and they were right. When the war began, Italy did not join. They said, you did not meet the conditions of our alliance. And a year later, they declared war on Austria and Germany. That is the worst type of ally. An ally that attacks you. Get new allies. So, Germany and Austria will eventually become known as the Central Powers. During the war, because it's in Central Europe, Bulgaria and the Ottoman Empire, the Turks, would eventually join for their own, looking back at it, insane reasons, but they would join. The Triple Entente, entente means understanding. So it's not an ironclad alliance. The Triple Entente is in reality a dual alliance, much like the other one, between a Republican form of government, France, and the autocratic monarchy of Russia. Russia and France have a very solid alliance. They should never be allies, except for one simple fact. They're terrified of Germany. Absolutely terrified of Germany. For very good reason. So you can imagine how Germany really does feel surrounded. And then Britain is the other member, but it's not an alliance. All Britain had was an understanding, a few things about colonies and about the English Channel. Britain never had an alliance, but Britain was becoming more and more scared of a growing Germany. And then there's 2 more kind of alliances we have to get down. Russia. Remember the protector of the Slavs? Russia was a protector of Serbia, that Slavic country. And so what the deal was, in the fight between Austria trying to hold on to their empire and a greater Serbia, Austria had to have Germany, Serbia had Russia. But if you have Russia, that means you have France. To get all this it's kind of tying everyone together. The other one is Belgium. Belgium was technically neutral. All the great powers said they would defend Belgium, but only one country meant it. Britain. Belgium had been a country for 84 years, and Britain was one of the countries that said, we will defend Belgium. The reason why is simple. They were scared that if Germany had a naval base right here, there's a harbor town called Ostend. That's 50 miles across the channel. Britain is now vulnerable. They want to keep the Germans as far away as possible. So that is the alliances. And so you think about it, we have all these interlocking alliances, and nobody really knows for sure what agreements were made. There's all these secret agreements, all these military leaders are meeting, and nobody knows what's going on. All this stuff going on at a time when they're building huge armies. Look at the size of the armies in 1914. They're absolutely remarkable. August 4th is traditionally considered the day World War I began in 1914. Please look at the size of the armies. Germany had about 67 million people, but 4.5 million people in uniform. France had 20 million fewer people and still kept up 4 million. Russia, which had over 120 million, nearly 6 million men, even though 2/3 didn't have rifles. That's bad for morale. Britain did not have the draft. Their army was much smaller, but still, Europe was an armed camp and on an absolute hair trigger. And so they're all building these mass armies, but the key word is, and it's up there, mobilization. And mobilization is modern war. Germany had conscription, a draft. Yeah.
So is that another reason then, or is that under the
That's part of the arms race.
Okay.
Because you think about now with industrialization and the arms, you can build more weapons, so everyone's building these huge armies. Ships are going to become the symbol of the arms race, even though the weapon that mattered was artillery. Artillery is the killer. Every 19-year-old in Germany was drafted into the army. Every 19-year-old man. They're in the army. They're in the army for a year. They're trained. They're drilled. They know how to fight. Now, there's professional officers who are in for life, and then you have this army. Then they're out. They go do whatever. Farmers, factory workers, whatever. But they're in the reserves for the next 20 years. And every summer, they drill for a month. They have younger reserves, Class A, then Class B, Class C. That's what mobilization is. Germany had less than 1 million men in uniform. But what mobilization is, calling up the reserves. When war began, they put the call out to mobilization centers, and men all over the country leave their families, they go to marshalling areas, and then they get on trains and they get into the frontier. That's mobilization. So over 3.5 million men were mobilized for Germany. Almost the same number for France, because they had a smaller army, they had a smaller population. All sent to the frontier, all ready to fight. Russia mobilizes, Austria, and they all do it in some way. And this is why it's important. Think about it. If there's war, boom, everyone mobilizes. Who has the advantage once countries start mobilizing? First. Exactly. This is what we have to get down. Mobilization. Whoever mobilizes first can attack while their enemy's not ready. So something about it's a race to mobilize. Mobilize first. What it means is a couple different things. But first off, every single country in Europe is on a hair trigger. On a hair trigger. Because they know if they're slow on mobilization, if Germany's slow, they will be squashed by 10 million men from Russia and France. So they got to mobilize first and then attack their enemy before their enemy is ready to attack them. That is the kind of country, or that is the kind of world of the 20th century. This hair trigger. And so here's the other thing we must get down. And that's something that's really hard to, it was hard for politicians, hard for anybody to really understand what this really meant. And so, if you're going to mobilize and mobilize first to attack, that means the order to mobilization, order to mobilize, is really an order to do what? Which means go to war. Mobilization equals war. And politicians didn't understand that. You know, sort of thinking, okay, we can threaten mobilization, we can, no. Once you mobilize, and this is the second part of mobilization, the war, the military takes over the country. Because think about it for a second. How do you get the troops to the front? The army has got to take over the railroads to get the troops and their equipment to the frontier before their enemy can. The smartest men in Germany were recruited to go into the army. And what did they do in the army?
Move railroads.
Exactly. They figured out the math to do train tables, to take over the very complex rail system to move men around. They take over the railroads. What else do they take over the army? Think, what's that? Yeah, all the food production, everything. Not only because you need the food for the front, but you're mobilizing a bunch of men who are farmers. That means you got to take over the farms. What else are you taking over?
Factories.
All the factories, the entire economy. Not only are you pulling men out of the factory to go fight, but no longer can you produce cars or any goods for consumers. You got to build shells, equipment. Mobilization means taking over the entire country by the army, by the military. Listen, that people just didn't understand. Yeah, there'd be elements of this before World War I, but never had industrialization been so important. Mobilization is literally taking over the country, mobilizing it for war. Every part of the country. So when the United States entered the war in 1917, that's what the US did. The government, the military is part of the government, took over the country and controlled it. It happens in schools. You think they're going to let people in schools talk about making this war bad? Are you crazy? They're going to make sure everyone's here, yeah, let's go fight. Let's get ready for the sacrifices. It's going to be, we got to get people ready. Not just that, I got to convince you two to get in uniform and go fight. Right? And now today, you too. Oh, no. Isn't that remarkable? I still can't get over the numbers. How many men? How big is the U.S. Army today? You know? About 200. An Armies. Of course, we have a population of 300 million, too.